So with that idea in mind, I want to officially introduce this space because
Let's do it.
that's so. This is ¿Por qué no los dos? Why not both? This is a special episode because we have uh, Kevin Rapp, an amazing creative that has worked with all sorts of brands from NASCAR. I like that. I saw that and I was like, that's I wanna talk about that. Netflix, Verizon, Twitter, Goodyear, FX, and so many more. And also, he has been someone that we have connected for a while on LinkedIn, and that kind of strange space of the internet that can be LinkedIn. And he has been an ally and a friend of La Hacienda. And this podcast is coming out thanks to La Hacienda. We're a creative agency that does branding, video production, media production, editing, etc., all those sorts of things. And also, last but not least, we have COO and co-founder of La Hacienda, Jorge Gomez.
Oh
Oh,
wow,
balloons! Perfect.
that was so
Unexpected.
quick, man.
I prepare that for you.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
prepare that for you. So thank you for being here, Kevin. I would love if you can give us a little context of who you are, what are you doing, and then we can get to the part of where do you come from.
Sure, man. So I am a creative director that focuses on building systems for brands, particularly video content systems, and primarily working with companies in the tech space. So I've been in the creative field for way too long, as evidenced by the gray hairs in my beard, and have worked both on the agency and studio side and also on the brand side, where I spent 4 years at a tech company called Root Insurance. During that time, I started when it was just a 100-person Series B startup, and within 3 years, it became a 1,800-person public company. So it was just insane mega growth that I got to be a part of. And I learned a ton from that experience on not just how to execute the work to a high creative standard, but learning how to prioritize the right work that's going to move a business forward. And as I started my own business, it was really about taking those strategies I learned on how to optimize production to focus on things that really drive business value and finding ways to use my creative skill sets that prioritize the work that actually helps businesses grow. And I've been doing this on my own for almost 2 years now, which feels insane. It feels like there's been some kind of time warp thing that has
Yeah.
accelerated the speed of time. But yeah, I'm stoked to be here.
Kevin, I want to ask you something that you were talking about, that you were part of this company that had this huge hyper growth. Because that's something that, not a lot of people get to go through, and it can be really good, but also it's like a double-edged sword.
Absolutely is.
Because in my own experience, I went on kind of like that phase with a couple companies, and it was like awesome. I got to do a lot of stuff with a lot of like awesome people, like a lot of great work. It was very meaningful to me, but then it became a matter of like it was like a lot of burned out because the expectations grow insane. Like the expectations get out of hand. People get very over their heads. So I want to ask you a little bit about what was the way that you kind of, you know, how was your experience going through that, and when how do you coped in the hard moments?
Yeah, you're hitting on things that feel very, very real, and again, pointing to the gray hairs in the beard. In that, absolutely, it's an amazing experience. You learn so much. I had spent so much of my time on the agency side, so I felt like I understood fast pace, right? Because when you're in an agency, you are cranking a lot. You're focused on how much volume that you can produce and putting those billable hours to work. But startups are an entirely different animal because you're not just figuring out how to produce volume, you're also reprioritizing your work constantly. You're basically reevaluating every day whether that initiative that was the most important thing to the business 12 hours ago is dead or not, and whether you should even be working on it at all. Um, so it's an experience that aged me a little bit because there were times where I was working on absolutely mission critical things for the business, and it was a lot of a burden to carry. I'll give you a specific example. In 2020, particularly during the late season of 2020, so we were pretty deep in the pandemic. The George Floyd protests were going on. There was a lot of civil unrest. It was a time where we were all
Yeah, it was very
experiencing
complicated.
collective trauma, right? We were all experiencing collective trauma. That was the time that the company went public. And at the same time, we were producing $1 million brand film with NASCAR driver Bubba Wallace, where we were aligning ourselves with Bubba, not just because he was a good spokesperson, but because he was actively pushing for progress and change in NASCAR. For those of you who don't know Bubba's story, he is the only black driver in NASCAR, is the only like trophy winning black driver in NASCAR in 30 years, maybe 50 years, since Wendell Scott. And he was the person who really made an outspoken public announcement about how he felt that the Confederate flags should be removed from stadiums in NASCAR.
I remember
And
I remember he also had there was like a whole incident. I don't want to get too into details of it because he was like very ugly. That there was some threats and some stuff against him, and it was just kind of yeah. I mean everywhere there was just like a very aggressive energy. It was just a very hard
yeah,
time to do business.
yes.
I think if the time's correct, Jorge and I were both in house or we're just kind of and yeah, I remember it was kind of that 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 confusing time where a lot of prioritization from the companies, and it was just scary because on one end there was all this stuff happening and on the other end the pandemic was causing also this stress about our jobs.
Yeah, we
And
were all like, is this company going to exist
yes,
in a few years? What we had no idea what the effects of the pandemic were going to be. We were like, are we turning off marketing spend altogether? What are we doing? And so on top of that uncertainty, we were pouring our hearts into this project with Bubba because we wanted to do something about social justice in that really really rough and uncertain time. Bubba felt like the perfect person to partner with because the company itself had a social justice mission. It was about removing demographic variables from pricing in car insurance, and using technology to measure driving ability instead. So Bubba pushing for progress in the regressive sport of NASCAR felt like a really great metaphor for us as a company that's pushing for progress in a regressive industry of car insurance. And so we were working really really hard to tell this story authentically without co-opting Bubba's story. You know, we were trying to talk about how we wanted to partner with him and why we felt like we wanted to ally with him and what we were doing as a company to live up to those values, without overshadowing Bubba's story because that would have just felt gross.
And I can also
And
imagine you did not want to come off as opportunistic, right?
exactly.
With the time period. It's like, now you're sharing this story because of what's going on. It's like, no, we've been
Yep.
doing this for a while, you know.
Yes.
So
It's inherent to the mission of the company. It's not just we're not just putting like a little black box on our Twitter icon, right? Like we want to exactly.
if I recall correctly, like his car also had the branding.
Yes.
Yes, right.
Yes.
Like
He put the Black Lives Matter branding on the car. And you're right, Gons. There was some really ugly response to it,
yeah,
including
it was pretty
from
wild.
then President Trump, right? Like there was a lot going on in that time with him. And so we were working on a very emotionally charged, very high stakes project. I mean, this was our first really, really big brand initiative. And at the same time, I was managing all of the communications around the company going public. So I was writing and directing a video to send to all of the like big investors to get them to invest on the IPO day. And in the meantime, we were like navigating all the stakeholder conversations with Michael Jordan's team, because Michael Jordan was the owner of Bubba's race team. We were navigating conversations with NASCAR, with the other sponsors like McDonald's and DoorDash. And guess what? Everyone had a different opinion about what they didn't like about the spot we were making.
Yeah, I can imagine it
Everyone else car with the other
text or anything like that, and especially in such an aggressive time, and to kind of go through there after you took the company public. What happened after? What was kind of like the transition of, like, because if I know correctly, that was kind of around the time we connected. And
Yeah.
I know that's around the time you transitioned from working there to starting your own business. So was it like you decided to do it? What was the catalyst of that change?
Yeah. So
Shout out
the
Jorge's cat, though.
That's a list. That was
the catalyst.
The cat. Yeah, that was time. But that's the clip. That's the clip.
We've been practicing.
Brilliant. The timing and animal training has finally paid off.
Thank you. It's what we've been doing at La Hacienda for the past year.
We maxed out the corporate card in paying animal training
Exactly.
for all our vets.
And it was all worth it for this moment.
Thank you.
So after kind of working through the Bubba film and the IPO, which were both huge successes for the business, the Bubba campaign earned over 3 billion impressions, almost entirely organically for the company. The IPO raised $750 million and is to this date the biggest IPO in Ohio's history. So there were just some really huge wins for the company.
Game changer kind of.
Yeah.
I gotta say, like, and the one of the points that I wanted to touch, like we cover a little bit of the negative and the, like, how stakes get higher and all that, but it's also really because often if you go through that and you do great work that it's like aligned with that, it can help you incredibly for your career. It can move you forward so much, because I can say for me, in a lot of ways, it was like that. But also it's like it's sort of one of those things, quoting Uncle Ben, with a great power comes great responsibility, right? It's like it's just like, I don't know, you're like a young athlete that they're asking you to, okay, you're gonna play with the first team in a way. And there's like that jump, and there's like all these moments of doubt, and there's like all these moments where it's just like difficult. And so that was something that for me resonated a lot with what you went through, and why I wanted to talk about this. So now this is the moment that you start your own business, you do the transition, and then this is kind of around the time we connected on the world of LinkedIn. So I want Jorge to cover a little of this here, because I think I have been the one that has been pushing Jorge into this like thing of LinkedIn. I know Jorge was like active. I have never loved being too active on it, but I have made peace with the fact that it's like part of the game, right? It's like you got to do it. You got to put yourself out there. You got to talk about what you do. And for me, one of the things I told Jorge at the beginning was, listen, man, like this is part of what we need to do. It's just like
it's part of the job.
It's part of the job. It's like one of the things that we are, this is one of the places that we gotta like be with our business, but I know for Jorge has been a transition, so I want to kind of let you guys drive the conversation on this part a little bit, because have you always been really active on LinkedIn, Kevin?
Oh God, no. I mean, I used it in the same way a lot of people did, where it's like it's my resume graveyard, right? Where I just like I use it just to be like present for people who might want to look at me for opportunities. And every once in a while I would share a project I was proud of, right? Or something like that. It was not a space that yeah, exactly. It was not a place where I was actively using as a platform to communicate with other people. I was not using it as a social media platform. God, no. But after, a few years at Root, I was like, I think I'm ready. I think I've built up enough skills that I didn't just have like I wasn't just a good department head. I wasn't just a good creative leader for an organization. I think I had built a business model. I think I had figured out how to help tech companies scale, and I think that I could offer that as a service for other companies. And I think there's there in terms of me taking what is unique about me and turning it into a business. And so my initial thing was just like, yeah, I'll post an announcement on LinkedIn. Maybe every once in a while I'll post some stuff and we'll see how this goes, and as an experiment. And as an experiment, it was wildly successful. The very initial phases of me announcing that I was going out on my own and starting to talk about some of the things that I did that was unique had people who had worked with me in the past like suddenly see that I was available and were like, "Oh, great. I have things for you to work on right now." And so by the time I had left Root, I had locked up enough work to keep me sustainable for like 3 to 6 months. And so I was like, "Okay, so this seems like a thing that I probably should invest in a little bit more, because I didn't even have to do any selling. People are already coming to me. And if I can build off of that, I think I can market myself really well and not have to get into sales mode, which is not something that I consider a strength of mine. I'm a much better marketer than I am a salesperson on the cold sales front. So that was me really kind of diving in on LinkedIn and double downing on it.
It's funny because I think that by that time is when I started like following you or being a bit more active on LinkedIn. And I remember your posts, that it was 3, 5 comments, and half of them were Gons and I being, "Hey man, you're the coolest. Hey man, I want to be just like you." Or, "Hey man, congrats on your success." Or, "This looks really
Yeah.
nice." Right. And now you have what, like hundreds of comments, impressions on every post, even if it's just you saying, "Hey, today's Friday, and this is my favorite X-Men issue from 1993." Right? So I feel like we've witnessed, or at least we've been part of that organic growth, because as you mentioned,
Absolutely.
you've been yourself at any point. You haven't shied from controversial opinions. You've been very determined on what makes you you. you know
Yeah.
you don't have this LinkedIn personality. You have your personality, right? And you talk a bit
Very much
about
so.
everything. Yeah, sure. You talk about your business model, about the systems. You share a couple projects, but you also share like tips for up and coming creators, up and coming agencies. uh,
Yeah.
a bit of our fight as creators with generative AI, and why
Yeah.
AI, it's good or bad depending on what you're using it for. So I feel like it's been, at least for me, because I'll be honest with you, and as Gon's mentioning, I have my complex relationship with LinkedIn, right? I don't like 95% of what LinkedIn is. Uh,
Yeah.
my feed has evolved tremendously over the past year. I used to, as you mentioned, I used to follow companies. For me, LinkedIn was a news site. And then, whenever I wanted to find a job or see what was out there, or see, what people were up to, I would just go in and comment, "Hey, congrats on the new job. Hey, this looks cool." And that's it. I didn't follow people, influencers. I just had my network and some companies
Yep.
that I found interesting, right? When I started getting
Bingo.
into it because of La Hacienda, I realized that this micro influencers circle was extremely toxic in a lot of ways. And I was like, I don't want to be part of this.
Yeah.
Also, I've had my own issues, differentiating like professional sounding Jorge from natural sounding Jorge. And also,
Yep.
English is my second language, right? So it's not even as natural to come out with my uh, personality on LinkedIn posts, right? And
Mm.
we all have this imposter syndrome, same as what I mentioned with the podcast a couple years ago. Like, why would people listen to us, right? Same with LinkedIn. It's like, why would people care what I have to say,
Yeah.
And of course, when you start, you're only gonna get 5 likes, and those are gonna be your life partner, your business partner, and your friends who you shared it with, and then the same comments of people who are not on your circle being supportive, right? Which, let's be honest, it's not like threading the needle, right? So it's a lot about being consistent, a lot about being true to yourself, and honestly connecting with people, right? Which
And
I have to work on that. So for that, again, congrats on it. You've been a huge inspiration. Every
Thank
time I
you.
see your post on LinkedIn, I'm like, okay, this is not the worst place to be because Kevin is here, right?
Well,
But yeah.
thank you very much, my friend. I truly appreciate that because you hit on a lot of the same struggles I had with it, which is this place is kind of boring, and when it's not boring, it feels toxic. Like the people who aren't boring are the ones who are telling me to grind my life away on work in order to be able to drive a Ferrari. And I'm like, that's not at all the lifestyle that I want. The the people who seem to be really successful on LinkedIn successful, right? Like let's
yeah,
disambiguate actual success from LinkedIn success
Pyramid.
because those are two different things.
was
And
that's not. I thought that was the real world. I
yeah,
thought that was the. That I thought that was the Matrix.
yeah,
That we are really on LinkedIn, and this is the simulation. That's
100%. And so there's this very warped and distorted view of what actual working success looks like on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
And so it was very much a, "Ooh, God, I do not want to be a linked influencer." Like, gross. That is the last thing I want to be. But then I started thinking about it and I was like,
Bad
okay,
news.
but that also means there's opportunity when I look at it that way. This is a boring space, so I can disrupt it.
Mhm.
I can that it became a creative challenge for me as a person to say, how can I make something that I personally would be entertained by and engaged by? What would I like to see when I was scrolling through the feed? What do I think is missing from this space? And can I fill that void with a thing that I'm excited by? And so it became this creative challenge for me to say, because I started with very like conservative in terms of what I do now, very conservative. Like, here's the sanitized professional version of why you should work with Kevin Rapp because I am a professional who does professional things, and here are my accomplishments, right? And over time,
That was pretty good. That's pretty
th-
good. I love that.
yeah, and I very quickly started to get rid of that because I was like, this isn't how I talk when I talk about the work to a normal person. How do I talk about the work when I talk to a normal human being? And how about I start talking like that? And how about I start showing people what a weirdo I am? Because that is a huge part of, I think, what makes me thrive in this business. I think people like working with me, not just because I'm capable at what I do, but because I'm an enjoyable person to be around. I make a lot of jokes. I think I have fun with the work, and I think that fuels my creativity, and I think it fuels the work that I do. So
um,
how can I bring that to LinkedIn?
one thing that I want to cover, uh, with this that you said is there's like something that I think about a lot. That is the fact when you do something for work that you enjoy because it's kind of a hobby or because it started as a hobby that turned into a career. um in my case, like trying to what I like trying for me to think that in back then in Venezuela that I was going to do what I do today. It was kind of, I mean, I would do similar things. Yeah, I was doing some stuff, but then I see what I do now and the change there's been just like a lot of change, but also
Yep.
I got access to a lot more opportunities and stuff when I moved here. But that being said, there has always been this balance or this thing of, okay, this is my work, but this is what I like doing, and sometimes it overlaps, and sometimes I hate this, and it's like that constant back and forth because that's part of like the the cliche part of being an artist.
Yeah.
But in the aspect of LinkedIn for me was I got to a point that I was just okay. I've been in here in the States all these years, grinding, doing all this work for all these people, getting, great opportunities, but also horrible, like horrible stories of things that like people did to me, people said to me, companies, like, and you learn the good stuff, you learn the bad stuff. And one thing that I hate about this whole LinkedIn bubble and it's this whole, when people take it so seriously, that
Mhm.
it's like they compare selling some software to that they are a marine, or they are that they compare themselves to doctors, or they, all these weird analogies, and there's
Yeah.
like all sorts of social media accounts that make fun of this. And
They
because
go
I
back
always
to
like,
the
it's
Roman
always,
Empire with their
what
self
is it,
efforts.
what is it?
They go back to the Roman Empire with their
Yeah.
self effort.
No, it's crazy. And then it's, I try to keep that very present every day in my work, that it's like, well, one, I'm very fortunate to do what I do, but second,
Mhm.
like, part of that is that I'm, oh wow, I was fortunate enough to carve this career. Well, might as well, show it, right? It's like,
Yeah.
that's the cool part of it, that you get to show. It's like, oh, I made this, drawing for money, or I made this song for money, or I made this thing for money. So that has been like the battle for me on LinkedIn. It got to a point that I just kind of didn't care anymore about, because it was just a matter of, why do I need to not talk about this? Like,
Mhm.
I don't work at that place anymore. I don't, work with that person anymore. It's like, let's be clear, this happened. I went through this experience. It's like, and sometimes work can be awful.
It
And and
Yeah.
and for and for somebody that is trying to like exist in a different environment, like, as a foreign person, also as like a person that does like the type of work that we do, it was just kind of, there has been like a lot of cycles on that for me. There's just been like a lot of times where I love what I'm doing. Sometimes I hate what I'm doing, and on LinkedIn, it has been like sometimes for me a place to talk about that, right? Like, there's like all the expectation that sometimes like all you're gonna talk about is good, and more often than not, sometimes there are tough moments in their career, like we were talking about earlier with these projects. So I want to talk now about your agency,
Yeah.
work that you're doing now, and then I want to talk a little bit about what you do outside of the work that you're doing. So, you started the agency in 2021 or 2022?
Uh 22. Yes, 2022.
So, and then you kind of did you went kind of on this by yourself? Did you had like people
Yeah.
that you, because for us it was, I started kind of reaching out to people and be like, hey, I might start calling you for some projects, I might start, um so did you kind of had people that you were like preparing for this, you wanted to kind of face this at least with?
Yeah. So I'm a very conservative person. Not well, let me be very clear about what I mean by
That's the
conservative.
clip, that's the clip.
Let me be very specific
cut
about
the,
what I
cut
mean
the
by
clip.
conservative.
We're talking
I,
about you have to be cautious about what you say, how you put
Cut
it
this
up
clip, this is
from
the clip out of
exactly.
context.
We got the 5 seconds
I
for you.
am a I
Yeah.
am a cautious person. I am a risk averse person. Let me put it that way. And so going out on my own was something that I was very resistant to. I mean, I was 17 years into my career before I really made this jump to do my own thing. Um, when my wife has been like encouraging me to do it for a very long time, and she's like, "You'd be really great at it," and I'm like, "I don't want that responsibility. That sounds awful. I am not a person who should be doing math on the finance side. I should not be doing that. I should not be doing operations. That is not my skill set. I like other people taking risks and then paying me money. That's a really great arrangement for me. So when
Yeah.
I made the jump, it was really, I was fishing for opportunities when I left Root. I was saying, I'm open to starting to freelance for a little while. I want to give myself as much runway as possible so that I can figure out what the next step is because I don't really know what it is yet. Maybe I want to take a VP position at another tech company. Maybe I want to go to a bigger studio. I didn't know for sure what I wanted. And it was really like fate kind of pushing that where, I put that post out. I sold 100K worth of work within weeks and I was off to the races. And so from there, it was like, okay, now I have to start building the scaffolding around what the business is. And so I started bringing in my trusted artists that I've worked with in the past and said, hey, I've got some stuff if you want to collaborate on this. But really, I was the one that was going to assume all the risk. It was all going to be, okay, I'm bringing on contractors to help support me on the work, but I'm going to be the one kind of managing everything as the only like full-time employee of the business. And I've pretty much continued operating that way since, where I am just bringing on a bunch of really great contractors and doing my best to pay them ethically. So I try to pay like 20% above their day rates so that I can have everybody share in the success of the business. And
I guess the email got lost on the mail office with us. That's just
we're what it'll
next
happen. It'll
next
happen.
clip. Next clip.
Next clip. Next clip.
What's the other clip?
So I I'm at this point where right now I am, trying to build what I think is the scalable model of, or not even scalable. I'm trying to build what I think the model of an agency should look like in 2024 and beyond, where I think the older model of these massive agencies is just, it's just not what it used to be. The value just isn't there for a lot of those bigger agencies. And even the mid-size agency, I think, is really struggling to exist in the model of what companies really need today. So building something that is a little bit more modular, something that is more nimble, something that relies on a collective group of really talented specialists that are brought in as the right tool for the job, feels like the right way to build an agency these days.
Yeah, we agree. That's you have been, of course, a role model for us in that aspect. We have always, since we connected, we have been kind of not only that philosophy, but also the type of work. I really
Yeah.
like this whole idea that of these designs, like video systems or all these
Yep.
animation systems, because I think it's a really cool way for agencies and for designers and people to package their work, right? And it's like,
Yep.
it's not like a secret recipe. It's like, but I think Kevin
No.
initially gave us it, like he started talking about the idea, and I have been doing it for a while, but I had never kind of thought about it in that way. And
Exactly.
it was like, oh, okay, makes all the sense in the world to talk about that. And but I don't want to cover that today. I want to do that. I want to talk that deeply
Yeah.
separately. I want to
Great.
do like a whole recording about this video system and get deep, and then we make money out of that.
That's awesome.
Let's jump.
So you want to make a system out of Kevin's systems.
That's right. No, it's like
I love it.
Because that's when you want to pop the hood of the car, and I want to talk about all the things. So you jump in the water, and you have done all this amazing work. I want to ask you, when you started your career, usually when the people that end up in, let's call, creative director, art director jobs, are people that would write, would design, would direct films or video, and sometimes like musicians and stuff. But like it's usually you go on that track to talk about, like in Harry Potter terms, Jorge, is when they had the hat thing. So that's kind of, there you go. No, love you, Jorge. So that's kind of what happens usually. It's kind of the imaginary school that you graduate and you enter the job. How was your start?
My initial hat was the post-production hat. So I got my start in the editing and motion design worlds. That's where I really kind of got my start at a small studio, in really just kind of getting my hands on pretty much everything post. And I worked my way up through that because they were like, "Oh, you like to write. Would you like to try writing scripts?" And because we were a small studio, I got more opportunities to try and dip my toe into a lot of different waters. And so there were some jobs where I would literally, like, I would design the video, I would do the animation, I'd do the editing, I would write it, I would come up with a concept. So I was pretty much like doing the entire job myself. But it was just giving me a lot of opportunity to kind of have that safe space because I was working within a studio. So it wasn't like me doing this as a freelancer. It was me kind of having a proving ground where I could try my hand at a lot of different skills. And from there, I got hired at another a mid-sized studio in Columbus called Space Junk, where I moved into just a director role. And so from that, it was going from the guy who does the thing and does all of the aspects to being a person whose job was to come up with a vision and figure out how to communicate that to other artists and inspire them to do the best work rather than just like doing it myself, which was a really big jump because it was really learning about how not to micromanage an artist. It was about trying to learn how to convey what my vision was, but not give them all the answers. It was about trying to figure out how to push them and have them bring some of themselves to the work so that it didn't just feel like something I would do, but just executed by other hands. Because if that's what I was going to create, why not just do it myself? And so that was like my real genesis into getting into a director role. And I just kind of continued to advance from there. It was really about me learning how to refine that skill set of taking the knowledge that I've learned from doing the work myself and being the hands and recognizing what I didn't like about creative directors when I worked in that position and trying to be what I would consider a better director, a person who trusts the talent of the people that he works with and gives them the rope to be successful, but also defines the project, defines the role of what that artist needs to be so that the project was still successful. So yeah, that is my
So
origin story.
I like that. One thing that I want to mention that it's kind of part of this whole story is one thing that is complicated in the, let's call, creative career is, at least here in the United States. In Venezuela, it's more common because of the context that you gotta wear many hats, that you gotta do
Yeah.
many things, you gotta know how to, because like, you gotta figure it out. There's not really industry there for you to like thrive in the way. So it's more natural that you just kind of like figure it out. Here,
Yep.
it you get pigeonholed. I
Yes.
remember earlier in my career, there was like I worked in a couple places that it's like, yeah, he's Gonzalo and he's a videographer, and it's
Yep.
like, I mean, but I don't feel like, and it was like bullshit. At the same time, it's kind of why does it matter? But at the same
Mhm.
time, for me, it was on the other hand, it was like, what if I said your title was X, because that's what you do on your work, right? It's like, not, some of these bullshit titles. And even though it was like that bullshit thing, it would like piss me off sometimes because I was like, dude, I'm doing all this extra work for your company that it's not really being a videographer, and then
Yep.
you're like labeling me like that so you can pay me what that job description says, right?
Absolutely.
and and it's funny because like it took like a long time on my, like, vertical career moves, that it got to a point that it's like, okay, like now I am legitimate enough to say that I do all these things because like I do whatever I want, right? Like that's kind of it. And I think that's like the cool thing, once like how things have evolved, how, once you enter this, level of seniority in a career like this, that it's a relatively new career, let's say, in the,
Yeah.
in the scope of things. um it's just kind of the way that wait, somebody sent me a weird message. Sorry. So like that evolution, how things have worked, and then you decide to be like, okay, for this project I can do this, for this project I can do this other
Yeah.
thing, and let you be more nimble in that way as well. Because
Yeah.
you still, like, I assume that you do sometimes work in some of the projects that you're doing with the agency.
Absolutely.
You got to do it. um so now talking a little bit more about, in the creative aspect, you do post, or you do editing and animation.
Mhm.
Do you do like illustration or that kind of other stuff?
Yeah, there are. I think the thing that I'm most widely known for is video as kind of content systems to help deliver batches of content in larger waves. But I've been all over the place. So I've done illustrations, I've done um, interactive displays for trade shows. I've done print for displays, and I I've helped with websites. Like, I've been all over the map, because once a client kind of trusts me, they're like, "Oh, great, I can kind of rely on you as a creative director, and you seem to have a pretty deep bench of people that you know. So do you know somebody who does this, and can you manage that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course," because I have a pretty deep, robust network of people. And so I've gotten pretty fortunate, where there are some companies that even kind of rely on me as essentially like almost their in-house creative team, but out of house, right? Like, they kind of see me as like a fractional creative department for their marketing team, and they'll just kind of say, "Hey, here are the initiatives that we need to get done this month. Can you help us break these down into creative assets and help find the right people to get this work done?"
Uh,
And so I've had some really cool opportunities that way.
I
that's
wanna I
that's
wanna
great.
I wanna talk here. I want Jorge to talk with Jorge on this. Jorge jumped into this career kind of. I know Jorge worked with some agencies in the past kind of as a client, right? And Jorge had like a more traditional college kind of trajectory. He did like I don't think in his life he thought he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be running this agency with this hippie that he works with." But one thing that has been really cool to see how he has learned kind of the language, how to like when work with the designers really I'm gonna in the trenches, the LinkedIn
The
bros
arena,
talk.
in the arena.
In the arena. You're in the arena or in the trenches? That's what that's the question I ask myself every morning.
You warrior gladiator, you.
Right,
Every
a
day
gladiator of design,
with the
and
with the brush on top, every day.
yeah, no,
Uh-huh.
full armor, and
And
well,
then you open up Figma.
Figma,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. With my lens, just to sit down here and
yeah.
that's it.
And you turn on the seasonal depression lamp. You know, my gladiator ancestors are like, "What are you doing?"
Exactly. And I
I
bring
mean,
my
that's something I think about, like my ancestors and like the ancestors of the
my
pets.
feisty companion, my sidekick, my
Uh-huh.
panther, to the trenches.
That's right. Um,
And clearly you've tamed that wild beast very well, Jorge.
yeah, it's Jorge's
Sure. Who's tamed whom?
who owns who? Who's the pet of who?
Exactly. Exactly. Who acts like it pays the bills. But yeah, so yeah, coming back to that. So, well, first of all, I know you were mentioning about this hyper focused approach in corporate or professional USA, right? And it not
Yeah.
only goes for design, right?
Yeah.
Like a bit of my background, I am a marketer by heart and by profession. I just got started on the design or creative side as an agency with La Hacienda, but for most of my life, if not all, I've done marketing in house, like within a company. Uh,
Sure.
and then back home, you were a marketer, right? And I used to do
Right.
marketing, right? And marketing, it could be one day digital, the other day events, the other day billboards, whatever. You would go to
Yep.
trade. Every day you would be wearing a different hat, and you had 5 different marketers in your department. Of course, we each had our own strengths, but we're working a bit of everything, right? When I came here,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, what do you want to be? And I'm like, well, a marketer. No, you have to be hyper focused, right? And then if you look at
Yep.
job descriptions, even if there, it's like email marketing manager. You have to have 10 years of experience doing email marketing. It's like, I've
Yep.
been doing email
Email
marketing.
marketing has been around for like 3 years, man. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
no, but even now, like,
I
I've
love
been
I
doing
love when stuff like that happens. It's like you gotta have X amount of experience in this like coding language, and like the guy that invented that, it's like I did this like 6 months ago.
it's like 10
Yeah,
years
yeah.
of G4
Years of
10
experience.
years in TikTok. Like,
Yeah.
It's like
what?
G4 just roll. Like, how do you mean 10 years of experience? But yeah, so it's like I've been doing email marketing for the past 10 years as part of or
Yeah.
for the past 10, 15 years as part of my role, but it hasn't been my role. Here it's like, no, you
Right.
have to be an SEO marketer, you have to be a backend developer. You have to be this very
Yep.
specific thing, which at the same time has granted me advantages and disadvantages in my experience, right? Because I've been able to pivot from one department and another, and I've been able to grow within companies because I do know a bit of everything. At the
Yeah.
same time, it's been a disadvantage because I don't necessarily have the technical expertise that people of my own age or experience have on that specific department. So it's like if we go to my role, I'm not the technically the best at it. But if you look at me as a department or as a person, as a professional, I don't know, I might
Yeah.
have the advantage there, right? So it's been sort of a journey, doing that in the US. One thing that I've always loved is working with agencies. I always like to be the point of contact with the agency, be it buying media, the creative side, whatever, because I do feel that I have these, let's say, I have a human touch, right? People, and we were talking about
Yep.
it with LinkedIn. You mentioned that part of your success has been from being your weird self. I think it's not being your weird self, it's being your human self. We're all weird in our
Yeah.
own way, but people just hide it in a professional manner because they don't know if people are gonna like it or not, or if people are gonna connect with that. We're all weird. Like
Yep.
the more you get to know someone, it's like, hey, you weirdo, right? So I have been able to bring that into my professional experience, and that's why I love working with agencies. And then, after a couple of not even shortcuts, like how do you say
Setbacks.
un desvío,
Uh,
when you're going this side and then there's construction there, so you have to take
a detour.
Detour.
a
Detour.
detour, desvío, detour. There you go. So after a couple of detours, we happened upon this conversation, Gons and I, to start an agency. Uh, Again, I have no creative background other than being the point of contact in house and having to
Yeah.
learn how to navigate with creators and with creative talent, which, some people love, some people don't. I love it because it was like the highlight of my day. Oh yeah, I had a meeting with the design team. That was the best hour of my day. Sometimes it would have been the worst hour because I knew I had bad news for to report back. Because hey, I know we're expecting this for tomorrow. Guess what? But yeah, so that's sort of like how I got started with the agency. Guns was looking to scale his freelance business. The conversation basically went Guns telling me, "Hey, I want to make more money working less." That was it. I was like, okay,
Love that goal.
exactly. And I was like, what you need to do is you need to hire people, right? You need
Listen,
to
that
build
Ferrari's not gonna
systems.
buy itself.
Exactly. You need to build systems. You need to build a company. And I was like, yeah, but I
Yep.
don't want to build a company, right? So I'm like, okay, we're gonna build a company together. You're gonna be the head creator. You're gonna be the one leading the product, and then
Yep.
I'll take care of back door. So you were talking about creators wearing the hat from Hogwarts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Hagrid. I'm the groundkeeper, right?
Love that for you.
Jorge is at that same height in real life.
Sure.
You're gonna have to let that beard grow out more, buddy.
You know,
It's-
I should. I should. And then
You
you,
should.
That's
you
It
also
would
see
be a great look.
my gray hairs, right? Funny story. 10 years ago, when I started working, you did mention that at a startup, you have a lot of risk for a lot of rewards. So I
Yep.
used to have a full set of hair when I started working at that company. 2 years later,
Uh-huh.
that was me. But I learned so much.
We're not
So
gonna say the
Yeah.
name of the company, but you're
no, no, no,
you're
no. It
you're
was an
you're
incredible.
liable for what happened to
It was an
Jorge.
incredible experience. I learned tons. Right. I Every day I was wearing a different hat, and those hats made me lose some hair.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, that's
Hmm.
sort of like how I got started into this company. Depending on the project, I manage the client or I manage the talent, and I've been able to learn tons of this
That's awesome.
language, as Gons was saying, right? So I feel like today I'm a more knowledgeable
Yeah.
person
Yeah,
in design terms.
he has been getting deep into it. Like he manages like some projects, like that's like he deals with the creative and like there are moments that I just need to check it out. Cool, like I don't like approved. I think this is great. This is up to our standard, and it like helps me leverage my creativity and other stuff,
Yeah.
which sometimes it's what I need to be doing, because like what I wanted to scale was, listen, I want to take care of the creative work. I want to take care of this. I want to take care of keep fostering the idea of the company, and also to sell, right? Like I get on
Yeah.
calls, talk with people. How can we help? How can we be the creative partner? And then kind of, and then here's the rest of the operation in the back as well. But this, we wanted to also do the podcast to, this is the front of the house, back of the house kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? Like we wanted to have this conversation on this level of to
Yeah.
talk about like all the levels of the business, because it's awesome. It's a great time, I think, to have a company. And but at the same time, last year was kind of a tough year, so I think it's really
Yeah.
cool that we get to live another day as with our companies. We're moving forward. We're doing cool things. So I want to get a little bit to start wrapping up, but I want to talk about what are you doing when you're not doing video scalable systems for high performing tech companies.
Or posting on.
Um,
Or
and posting on LinkedIn. Yeah. Honestly, it's like hang out with my kids. I play Dungeons and Dragons with my friends. I play video games. I read a lot of comic books. I do nerdy stuff.
what video
Um,
games do you play?
so I have been playing a lot of Baldur's Gate 3 lately. Pretty incredible. It's like
That.
the amount of choices that you can make in that game is insane, and it like from a like creative perspective of like imagining the decision tree of like how that game came together like is blowing my mind
That
as I
sounds
play
like
it.
that sounds like a problem to me. That sounds like something that I should not play.
I Kevin, I just finished my first campaign,
Okay.
and I feel like I'm a Templar back in the day because I want everyone to follow my new religion, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
And I'm like, why aren't you playing this? Jorge, I
Yeah.
don't like the combat system. I don't like the style. I don't like this. Why are you not playing it? And it's
Jorge,
Yeah.
Jorge and I
we can
Jorge and I were into Diablo for a
together.
minute.
Done. No,
Yeah.
but Diablo 7 or 8 out of 10. Baldur's Gate 11.
Yeah, it's so good. I'm not a big turn-based RPG guy. Like
Oh,
that's not really my favorite type of system, but
Same.
like you see so many games that like have built this open world and really it's like we just put a bunch of fetch quests and like we just built all this open space that there's not much to really do in. This is like fulfilling the promise of what an open world game is supposed to be for me, because there are so many opportunities to explore and find something in that
Mhm.
vast world, and so many different paths that you can take into the story, and things that like would be seemingly completely inconsequential become a major piece of the story. And I'm still pretty early into the game. I just beat act 1 of it. But it's like I'm genuinely blown away by the craft of the immersion into the experience and how much thought and care was put into building an experience that feels like you have true control over the story. It's not like you have very clear guardrails and
Yep.
you can have choices, but like the choices like
Don't matter.
you either kill the villain or you don't, and like somebody is maybe kind of mad at you based on your choice. Like that's it. Here it's like you can be on one side of a conflict or another, and then that will completely change the experience of the story the whole way through the game.
I just want
It's
to
crazy.
say that's an awesome review, but also want to clarify this is not an ad for this game.
Not an ad.
Are
They're
paid
not
by
paying us,
Larian Studios.
but
I
we wish,
will
we wish,
absolutely take that money though.
we
If you want to
wish,
throw
yeah.
that sponsorship dollars our
Listen,
way,
yeah,
we'll take it.
yeah, yeah, no, Jorge and I were a little bit into the Diablo for a bit, and then we felt like a little betrayed, really, with the game.
Yeah.
So we kind of, so next one of like these final questions, Kevin,
Yeah.
what are you listening to?
Ooh. So, um, I the podcast I've been listening to most recently is a podcast about the X-Men. It's called Cerebro. Each episode focuses on one particular character and does like a really deep dive on their entire character history, and it's particularly looked at through a queer lens. It's run by a gay man, and he usually brings on a guest that has like context around a particular character's history. So he'll bring on trans people who can bring like can shed that perspective onto trans characters, or characters who could be read with a trans reading. And so there's just like a really thoughtful and interesting analysis of what the mutant metaphor is, and just like a lot of like weird joy about all of the weird moments in 60 years of history of the X-Men. So that's a podcast that I really love. In terms of music, what have I been listening to lately? I mean, I'm always listening to the band Churches because I love them with my whole heart.
That's one I say
Um,
churches with like a V instead of a
with
U.
a V.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Churches with a V. The my friends used to think I was really religious because I have 4 kids and I always wore a Churches hoodie, and I'm like, no, I just like Scottish pop trios. That's my thing. That's really all you need to know about me. But I've also been listening to a lot of Still Woozy and Cautious Clay and Duckworth. Those are a couple of like weird modern R&B type artists that have kind of like a little bit of a funk vibe to them that I've been really into.
Nice. And then this kind of last question, what are you reading, or any more
Yeah.
like, well, what are you reading, and also what's like a great book about creativity that you would recommend?
Okay. Uh, I'm usually reading comic books. I'm always reading comic books. So again, X-Men, like the Krakoa era of X-Men is something that I'm recommending to everybody. Even if you're not an X-Men person, I recommend jumping in with House of X and Powers of 10 because it completely re-envisions the concept of the X-Men in a really, really brilliant way. So that's something I would highly recommend. It's just wrapping up the Krakoa era of comics, which started with that in 2019, and I'm very eagerly anticipating the end of that. I've also read a ton. I tried to read every Judge Dredd comic ever written in over the past like 2 years, and I got through all of the issues of 2000 AD and the Judge Dredd magazine, which is like 45 years of comics that are published weekly. And so it's just there was a lot of Judge Dredd that I consumed, and it's great. I
Do
love
you
Judge
read
Dredd.
them digital or do you get the?
Digital.
Okay, I was gonna say that's quite an is it going that well for your agency? Wow.
Thing- things things are things are fine, but they have like compendiums of like all of the Judge Dredd. They call them the case files books, where like you get all of them collected into editions. And so I've been reading them all digitally, and it's been just a wild experience because it's such great satire of American culture through the lens of very sarcastic British people. It's great.
The original movie is Sylvester Stallone,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
the most recent is Carl Urban, right?
Carl Urban. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And the most recent one is written by Alex Garland, who did Ex Machina.
Oh, okay.
So
And
like,
he's doing that new one that is coming out, Civil War, I think. The
yeah,
new
that's
A24
correct.
looks really
Yep.
cool.
Yeah. The,
Um,
the the new Dread movie is new. It was from 2012, I think,
yeah.
but it's great. It's really
Nice.
good.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for coming to this, space that we have here in Por qué no los dos? ¿Por qué no los dos? I
Okay,
wanna,
come on.
yeah, I wanted to say it with like both accents. What's your name? Gonzalo or Gonzalo? It's like you get so programmed sometimes. Um, but Kevin, what's next for Kevin Rapp Consulting? and I want you to give us a little, goodbye message to whoever is listening to this, and you know, whatever that you want to say
To the masses
So
here at
what
the
to the
Coliseum.
masses, the millions of people that
the
listen to
the
this show.
the the millions of just listeners that are hanging on our every word. Um, so what's next for me is just gonna continue to try and do good work. I'm gonna continue to try and fight for creatives because I think that this is a really hard time for creative people right now. Not just with the culture of layoffs and just it being a really difficult time, but the rise of generative AI and the fact that creativity as a whole has been culturally devalued. um and I think it's just a really difficult industry to be in because it is so rife with exploitation, because it's a thing that we all love to do and a lot of us would do it for free. And so we are very easily exploited by companies that uh, don't recognize its value and would easily take advantage of people who do it out of the love that they have for the work that they do. And so if there's any like larger goals that I have, it's not really for the agency. It's more for how can I empower other creatives to recognize the power of what they do? How can I get creatives to understand that they are worth more than what they think they are? That they should continue to advocate for themselves, because that's the only way that we're going to collectively get more power, is for each one of us to individually step up and say that I'm worth more, and not just fight for the person alongside of us, but fight for ourselves too. And so that's, if I have like any mission or anything that I try to get out of this LinkedIn thing that I'm doing, the larger goal is to help creatives understand how important what they do is, and how important it is that they understand, recognize, and advocate for their own value. So that's the message I'd love to leave with everybody.
That was a really, yeah, no, I'm ready to flip this desk. What
Well, and
no, that I really like that also. And I this is kind of, it was very meaningful, and also just to kind of, in the irony of things, that's the clip that we'll put like the inspirational music, black and white, right?
Go full Hermosi with it.
And yeah, that, let's but
Gladiators. like it's gotta have like the gladiator theme song
of
underneath it. It's
course,
gotta
or like
get
Spartans.
those.
yeah, that's kind of, that's the direction I'm thinking for that. No, I
It's
think I
great.
think
It's great.
No, but it's funny that you
Let
mentioned that you like what you do so much that you would do it for free. But honestly, with generative AI, you are doing it for free, right? Because
100%.
anything you put out there can be used and will be used to exploit you. Even if it wasn't for that purpose, right? So uh,
Absolutely.
I feel like you are absolutely right when saying that today is a crucial moment for creators in that space, because yeah, it's a shiny new technology. Oh, everyone can use it, but at
Mhm.
the same time, it's like, is it ethical, right? And not even ethical, is it sustainable, right? Because say we stop doing creative work today because generative AI took
Yep.
over. By next year, they won't even have somewhere to pull, right? Because we also
Bingo.
design and then the recycled stuff. So I'm not even talking about the impact that it can have if it feels human, if it's going to convey emotion, nothing like that. It's like it's not even sustainable.
It's unsustainable. And the thing that I'm constantly going back is, have we proven that it provides business value?
Oh, it doesn't.
We've proven that it's cheaper, but reducing cost doesn't equal business value. I can make the cheapest thing on an iPhone that I possibly can. That doesn't mean it's going to make a company $1 million when you put a media buy behind it.
it
That's the
happens.
thing that
It happens. That's the
it
thing.
happens.
But people think that because it happens to like X brand, because their product is really good, then
Yep.
because like their shitty product, they think it's gonna,
Or
that's
it's
like
like
it's
even with LinkedIn, right? Because let's be honest, generative AI took over LinkedIn, right? Half,
Oh yeah,
if not more,
everybody
of the
drank that
posts.
Kool-Aid.
And it at some point kind of pisses me off because I had a very clear when I started posting, those 2 weeks where I posted, I had a very clear-ish structure, right? Like with my bullet
Yep.
points, like it was very like school how to write. You had your prompt, you
Yep.
had your intro, you had your bullet points, and then you close it down. After that, generative AI took over. It was right around the time, and then everyone wrote in the same structure.
In that
So I
same
was like,
format. Yeah.
I'm writing the same way AI would write. So do people think that I did it or didn't I? So it's like, even if
Yeah.
I'm not using it, I still feel like people would seem like I'm using it, right? Because also, again, English as a second language, I write way more technical or robotic
Yep.
than I would because it's like professional Jorge, right? So I stopped at some point because I'm like, anything that I write comes out as generative AI. So
because you are the AI. Never
that's
forget it.
that's the clip.
Dun dun dun.
This
Twist.
this is the end. It's like a movie. Well, I'm gonna stop recording. Thank you, Kevin, really, for being here. You're one of our honored guests of season 1 of Por qué no los dos and I really appreciate that message, and thank you for sharing all those awesome ideas, and thank you for being you and doing what you do, and for fighting the good fight.
For being
So
human.
Likewise, dudes. Likewise. Glad to be here and can't wait to hear more of Por qué no los dos.
next we'll do the secret episode about it, and then we'll do another episode about AI.
Oh,
What
that's where you're just gonna hear me
we're
yelling
gonna, but
for like
that's
2
gated.
hours.
That's gonna be gated. People gotta pay.
We're
It's
gonna
it's
build
kind of like
systems around it.
it's like a pay per
So
view. It's because like that's
me,
gonna be
me,
like
me in the ring with Mid Journey,
that's
just
right.
going at it.
It's like a competition.
That's when you need the gladiator music.
There
That's
you go.
right.
That's
Exactly.
because
Like with a single like spear, and then like legions of lions and dragons, all generated by AI.
I'm
Yeah,
there. I'm in the trenches, baby.
there you
That's
go.
right.
There you go.
And then it turns out that Jorge was the AI the whole time. That's the ultimate twist of the commercial.
Smash cut.
Full circle.
Exactly.
Made in CapCut. Goodbye.
All right.